Once upon a time, in the great kingdom of Umoa, there lived a blind maiden named Amuli. Though her eyes saw nothing, she swept the palace floors with perfection. She was a personal maid of the prince, chosen by the chief priest himself. When Amuli was selected, the entire kingdom was shocked. She was the only daughter of a famous village hunter, but people could not understand why a blind girl was chosen to serve the future king. The village was full of beautiful young women with perfect sight. Why her? Soon, the people revolted. They demanded that Amuli be replaced with Chinaza, the daughter of a powerful elder who had always dreamed of his child marrying the prince. On the day they gathered to make their demand, the skies darkened, lightning flashed, thunder roared, and a great voice echoed from the heavens. Touch not even a hair on her head. If any harm comes to her, the entire village will suffer. The girl who has been chosen must serve the prince, or a great calamity will fall upon you all. Fear gripped the villagers, and they scattered like dry leaves in the wind. From that day on, no one dared question why Amuli had been chosen, not even the king. So, Amuli entered the palace to serve the prince. But Prince Obedi despised her with all his heart. For years, he had dreamed of having a maid who might one day become his queen, just as the stories foretold. Many personal maids had risen from humble service to the throne itself. But when he saw that his maid was blind, his pride turned to fury. A blind girl? Is this the insult the gods have sent me? Am I not worthy of beauty, of perfection, of a woman whose eyes are clear? He shouted. From that day forward, Prince Obedi made Amuli's life bitter. He mocked her before his friends, spilled water on the floor she had just cleaned, and forced her to carry heavy loads while laughing at her stumbles. Yet, despite his cruelty, Amuli moved with such accuracy that many began to doubt her blindness. She glided through the palace like one guided by unseen hands. Her fingers had memorized every corner, every crack, every hidden passage, as if the very walls whispered to her touch. One morning, Prince Obedi stormed out his chamber in rage. My ring is missing. The signet ring my father gave me on my 18th birthday has been stolen. The entire palace froze. The prince's eyes darted sharply, then landed on Amuli standing quietly in the corner. It is her, he roared. The blind maid. Who else could it be? She moves through this palace like a spirit. She knows every hidden place. She must have taken my ring to enrich herself. Gasps filled the air. All eyes turned to Amuli, who stood in silence. Search her room, the prince commanded. The guards rushed into her small quarters, lifting her sleeping mat and searching every corner. But no ring was found. Impossible, Prince Obedi shouted. Search again. Still nothing. Enraged, the prince stormed into Amuli's room himself. He tore apart her belongings, his hands trembling with fury. But no matter how hard he searched, the ring was not there. Impossible, he muttered under his breath, because he knew the truth. He had planted the ring there himself. How is it here? Prince Obedi thought to himself as he stormed back to his chamber, furious and confused. But when he entered his room, his steps faltered. His missing ring sat on the dresser, untouched. Obedi staggered backward, his mouth falling open. His heart pounded like a drum. No, this cannot be, he whispered. I placed that ring in Amuli's room with my own hands. I hid it beneath her mat myself. How then has it returned here? For the first time in his life, Prince Obedi felt a fear he could not explain. Sweat rolled down his forehead as he sank onto the edge of his bed. Trembling, he had planned to disgrace Amuli, to brand her a thief before the entire palace. Yet now, staring at the ring resting safely where it belonged, he knew something beyond his control was at work. From that day forward, strange things began to happen. When the prince poured water on the floor to watch Amuli slip, it was he who fell, spraining his ankle. When he released ants into her mat to torment her, it was his own bed that crawled with thousands of angry insects, biting him until he screamed like a child. Terrified, Prince Obedi began plotting another way to rid himself of Amuli. He decided to take a woman from the village as his lover. His friends introduced him to Chinaza, the same woman the villagers once wanted as his maid. Obedi paraded Chinaza proudly through the palace. This, he boasted, is the kind of woman worthy of a king, not a blind, crawling servant whose father is not even fit to polish my shoes. Chinaza smiled sweetly, but inside her heart was full of venom. To her, Amulai was not just a maid. She was a barrier the gods had placed between her and the throne she so desperately desired. And so, Chinaza resolved to destroy her. One night, while Amulai was quietly cleaning the king's throne, Chinaza approached her. "Blind maid," she hissed, standing face to face with Amulai, who bowed respectfully. "You do not belong here. Leave this palace within 2 days, or the only thing left of you will be your corpse." Amulai, who had endured venom from Prince Obeidi's lips many times, only lowered her head and replied calmly, "If the gods want me gone, then gone I shall be. But if the gods have planted me here, no hand can uproot me." Chinaza's rage boiled over. She slapped Amulai across the face. "How dare you speak to me so, you worthless maid? I will teach you that no one crosses me and lives to tell the story." Seizing Amulai by the arm, Chinaza shoved her into the king's throne. Amulai gasped as she fell onto the sacred seat. A wicked smile spread across Chinaza's lips. She had finally found her chance. Not only would this disgrace Amulai, but would also condemn her to death. For sitting upon the king's throne was the greatest abomination in the land. Chinaza rushed out, screaming hysterically, "Abomination! Abomination!" The palace guards and servants gathered as she wept bitterly, her voice trembling with false sorrow. "The blind maid has defiled the throne," she cried. "I saw her sit upon it, laughing like a queen, mocking the blood of our fathers." Gasps filled the air. Everyone knew the punishment for such a crime was death. The king himself, unable to believe such treachery, strode toward the throne room. But when he arrived, he did not find a mocking maid seated in his chair. Instead, he found Amulai standing beside the throne, tears streaming down her cheeks. The king's eyes widened in disbelief, his heart burning with rage. "Blind girl," he roared. "Do you mock me? Do you think your blindness gives you the right to insult the throne of Omoa?" Amulai dropped her broom and fell instantly to her knees. "My king," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I did not sit here by choice. I was pushed." "Silence." Chinaza cut her off before she could finish. "Do you hear her, my king? She dares to lie before your very face. I saw her with my own eyes. She sat upon the throne, beating it with her broom, boasting that one day it would be hers." Gasps filled the air. The whispers of the crowd grew louder. Could it be true? Could the blind maid truly desire the throne? They murmured among themselves. The king's face hardened, with fury burning his eyes. He ordered that Amulai be locked away until the truth could be revealed. Chinaza was stunned. She had expected the king to sentence Amulai to death immediately for defiling the throne. Instead, Amulai was only imprisoned. Panic surged in her chest. She rushed home to her father's compound, her eyes wide with fear. "Papa," she cried, "the plan failed. Amulai still lives. The king has locked her away. But if the gods reveal the truth, I am finished. You must do something, please." Elder Oki, her father, was a man both feared and respected. Though he sat on the king's council, whispers claimed his tongue dripped with poison and his hands with charms. He clenched his jaw and looked at his trembling daughter. "Calm yourself, my child," he said slowly. "If the king has not killed her, then we will. The gods may protect her in the palace, but there are powers darker than the gods, and I know exactly where to find them." That very night, Elder Oki ventured deep into the forest where no man dared tread. The path was shrouded in shadows, filled with the cries of owls and unseen beasts. Hours passed before he arrived at the shrine of the most feared Dibia in all the land. Human skulls surrounded the altar, glaring in eternal silence. Elder Oki fell to his knees, singing praises before the Dibia, then revealed his desire. "Great One, my daughter must become queen," he pleaded. "But there is one standing in her way. I want the blind girl dead. Snuff out her life, and when my daughter ascends the throne, I will make you a rich man." The Dibia smiled darkly, chanting incantations that shook the night air. "Go home and await your good news," he assured. Elder Oki left, believing his plan was secure. But the next morning, the news that spread through the kingdom was not what he expected. The king was dead. Amuli, the one they thought cursed, was still alive in the palace prison. The kingdom plunged into deep mourning as the town crier beat his gong, announcing, "By the ancient laws, a new king must be crowned within 24 hours. If not, the throne will pass to another family." Pride swelled in Prince Obeidi's chest. With Chinaza by his side, he wept before the people in public, but behind closed doors they rejoiced. "At last, the throne is mine," he whispered. "You will rule the great kingdom of Umoa," Chinaza replied sweetly, "and not even death will stop you." The coronation began. The chief priest called the prince forward, and Obeidi knelt eagerly. As the crown was lowered onto his head, he smiled, until suddenly he screamed in agony. His body shook violently. The crown slid off and rolled onto the ground. The crowd gasped. The chief priest, bewildered, picked up the crown and tried again. But the moment it touched Obeidi's head, it burned hot and leapt away, as if rejecting him entirely. A dreadful silence fell over the people. The chief priest raised a staff. "The crown has rejected Prince Obeidi," he declared. Obeidi's eyes widened with terror. "No, I am the son of the king, the rightful heir. The crown is mine." The priest shook his head solemnly. "The throne of Umoa cannot be deceived. The crown chooses its owner." He lifted his staff high into the air. "Gather the entire village. We shall perform the sacred choosing ceremony, as tradition demands. Whenever the crown rejects a proposed heir, the crown-choosing ceremony must be carried out. In this ritual, the people of the land will crown one after the other until the rightful heir is revealed." Prince Obeidi could not believe his ears. He stood frozen as his dream slipped from his grasp. Chinaza, seeing his disgrace, began to distance herself from him. She now stood a chance to become queen herself, and she would not risk losing it by tying her fate to the rejected prince. The entire kingdom gathered before the palace. The air was heavy with tension. No one spoke above a whisper. The golden crown rested on the royal stool as the people lined up, each waiting for their turn. One by one they came. The warriors, the hunters, the elders, even the children. But each time the crown was placed upon a head, it slipped off, rejecting them. Fear spread among the people. At last, it was Chinaza's turn. As the crown was lowered onto her head, the people gasped. It rested longer on her than on anyone else. Chinaza's face lit up with triumph. "The gods have chosen me," she cried, her voice trembling with excitement. Her father, Elder Oki, rushed forward to embrace her, but before his hand could touch her, a deafening crack split the sky. A bolt of lightning struck them both, and they fell lifeless before the crowd. The crown tumbled from Chinaza's head. Shock rippled through the people as they shrieked in fear. At that very moment, the iron doors of the palace prison swung open on their own. Amuli stepped out, her face calm and radiant. The chief priest's eyes widened. He raised a staff and declared, "The crown has tested all but her. Place it on her head." Amuli knelt humbly as the crown was lowered onto her. The moment it touched her brow, her blind eyes opened wide, shining with sight for the first time. Gasps erupted across the crowd as the crown balanced perfectly and refused to fall. The entire kingdom fell on their faces in reverence as the chief priest lifted his staff high and thundered, "Behold, the true heir has been revealed. The throne of Umoa has chosen its ruler." Prince Obeidi staggered forward, his face pale with fury. "No, this is impossible. Lies, all lies. She is nothing but a servant, not my sister. I am the rightful heir, the son of the king," he shouted, pointing at Amuli, who now bore the crown that had rejected him. The chief priest turned slowly toward him, his voice booming like a storm. "Prince Obeidi, you speak in ignorance. Hear the truth of the gods. Amuli is not a servant. She is the firstborn child of the late king, your twin sister. She was born before you, making her the rightful heir." The people gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. The chief priest continued, "A prophecy was spoken before your birth, that the king's first daughter would bring about the end of his reign. Fearing this, your father cast her away into the forest on the very night she was born. But in doing so, He fulfilled the prophecy himself. The moment Amuli was forced upon the throne, her reign began in the spirit realm, and the king's reign ended, bringing about his death. The villagers bowed their heads in awe. "Omoa, hear me!" cried the priest. "The throne does not lie. The blind maiden you mocked, the child you rejected, is no ordinary girl. She is a true heir of the late king, cast away by fear, yet chosen by destiny. The prophecy has come to pass. Amuli is queen." Prince Obedi stumbled back, his fists clenched, his face contorted with rage. "No, I will never bow to her. She will never be my queen," he bellowed. The chief priest fixed his gaze upon him, his staff glowing with power as he prepared to deliver his final judgment. "Obedi, you are indeed the son of the king," the chief priest said, his voice steady and commanding. "But you are not the heir. The blood that first came from your mother's womb is the blood chosen to rule. She was born before you, cast into the forest, and left to die. Yet the gods reserve her life through the great hunter, who found her and kept her safe. You mocked her blindness, yet it was that very blindness that protected her and prepared her for the throne." At that moment, she rose to her feet. Her eyes opened, and for the first time, she saw. Her voice was calm as she began to speak. "I was cast away because it was said I would bring about the king's death. But I never lifted a hand against him. I sought only to serve, even as a maid. Still, destiny cannot be overturned, not even by the will of men. The throne has chosen me, and I accept to rule Omoa, not with pride, but with justice." The entire village fell to their knees, chanting her name. Even Obedi dropped his knees, his voice breaking as he cried out an apology to his twin sister for all he had done to her. She turned her gaze upon him, her eyes soft with compassion, and said, "Obedi, you hated me, mocked me, and tried to disgrace me. Yet you are still my brother. I do not seek your destruction, only your change of heart." And that was how Amali became the first queen of Omoa. The prophecy was fulfilled, for the king's death gave birth to a queen whose name will be remembered for generations. Her reign brought peace, justice, and prosperity. She ruled not only with wisdom, but with insight and compassion, qualities far greater than power itself. The lesson of this story is clear. Destiny cannot be stopped, no matter how hard men try to fight it. Though blind and despised, Amali carried greatness hidden within her weakness. She was mocked, rejected, and cast away, yet the very thing that others believed disqualified her became the proof of her strength. Power does not belong to those who boast or oppress, but to those chosen through humility, endurance, and character. Never look down on anyone, for the stone the builders reject may one day become the cornerstone.